Hey everybody, and welcome to day 26. I'm a little behind in my days, so excuse the lack of clothing changes over the next couple days because I'm doing some in the same day. So on this day 26, some videos that I've done have been serious and some have not been, and I've been revealing more things and so forth. And on this day 26, there's something that I wanted to talk about that actually kind of touches my heart a little bit. And I think it's quite normal that, maybe men and women, I mean, I can't speak for men, but what is quite normal as you get older is you start to think about the first that you'll never have. And what I mean by that, let me explain what I mean by that. I sometimes get sad because I think about the first things, situations and stuff that I will never have. Like, I'll give you an example. You know, as we get older in life, we have, especially women, right? Because women are fantasizers. We're romantics, and we think about different things of, the romance of things and how we would like things to be and so forth. And I remember before I had my daughter, I had this idea, this picture of how I would reveal how I was pregnant and different things like that, and go through the process of it being good news and happy and so forth. And it dawned on me how I'll never have that opportunity. The day that I found out I was pregnant, my daughter's father was moving out. So there was no happy reveal. There was no uh, going out to dinner and giving him a card or anything. And the sad part about that is I'll never get that. Like, I was after I had my chemo and different things like that. I was told I would, basically never have any more children again. So when you go through this process and you go through these situations and you start thinking about other things that you'll never have first. I was proposed to years ago when I was in my late 20s, and I was engaged to a gentleman, and I had an opportunity to go with my mom to go dress shopping, and for all of that to be that first taken away from me because he cheated on me and got some girl pregnant while we were engaged to be married. So I think about turning 21 and how it kind of sucked that day, but I won't ever happen again. And it made me just think about the passion of you can't relive your first. Like you can't redo things over, and you only get an opportunity once at certain things in your life. And it's like I see that now, and it's like, for instance, like everyone knows I was married. The proposal wasn't the most romantic thing, and the marriage was, no one was there. It's like, this was my first marriage. It should have been what I had hoped it would be, but it wasn't. So it's like, so number one, is it my fault because I let this go on this way? Or number two, do we just settle and just say, okay, well, I won't have my first, or it'll just be oh well. But I just thought about things in my life where my first, and I'll never get them again. I think the thing that hits me the hardest is children. I remember in my 20s, I so wanted to be in this position where I was happy to announce that I was getting pregnant. I wanted to pick bridesmaids and enjoy a full wedding, and I wanted to have all of those things that encompasses these stages in your life, and at 50 I didn't have many. So my only thing is I can look at these next 50 years and say to myself, well, now it's time for new first. You know, here it is. I'm day 26 until I'm 50. I actually have zero plans for my 50th birthday. I just didn't give it much thought about it, except that I want to do a lot of self-reflection about what I hope for the next 50 years. And it's like I just kept thinking about first, you know, and it saddened me. But I think the thing that hit me the most was children. Like, I remember, like, I wanted that moment. Like, I wanted to find out I was pregnant and it be like this happy thing, you know, and you have these reveal parties and, you know, family gathers around because a new life is coming in. And I didn't get to have that. I got married under horrible circumstances and didn't, you know, it just was all wrong. You know, the marriage thing, like, yeah, I can get that again, but it's not your first. You know, and it's like, I wonder how many women share with me in the same thing about children, because, you know, we have these kids, but under what circumstances did we have these children? You know, was it a happy time for you? But what if I was given that opportunity again? You know, it's time to look back and think about how you can make things different, new number ones in your life, but you can't help but to reflect on those times of when you had your one shot at the first and it's gone. Whether it's due to someone else's negligence or different things like that, but you can do nothing but reflect and say, the one opportunity I had for XYZ is done. I think I'll repeat myself, and I think now that I sit here and think about it, the kids thing actually probably hurts me the most, you know, because I wanted more children. And it was weird because I think a small part of me wanted more children to have the opportunity to have my first. If that makes any sense to you. Like, I wanted to have more children, so I had an opportunity to experience the fun part of it, the fun part of being pregnant, the fun part of, you know, wobbling and all this kind of stuff. Like, my pregnancy was not that. You know, it was, you know, tumultuous. Like, you know, it wasn't, we were not really together. There was issues, and here you are trying to go through a pregnancy, you know. So it was like, I was like, in my mind, I was like, great, I had a beautiful baby girl, wonderful. I was so glad she was a girl. And I said, but back then I was like, it's okay, like, I'll have an opportunity to do it again. So I say this to you, as I say, you have to understand, in some cases your first will always be your first and you'll never get it. It'll never get it again. It could be your first and last. Now, this was something totally out of my control. Like, I wouldn't have known when I was pregnant with Morgan that would be the last child I ever have in my life. It just never dawned on me. I assumed, and we talked about assumptions in other videos where I said, I assumed I would have more children. And I made that assumption with zero proof. So when I look back on assuming in my first, I say to you, if you're approaching things in your life and you know it's going to be your first, like, make sure it is everything that you hoped it would be and you're planning it accordingly to be that way. You know, I learned in my 50 years, if you want an experience and you want to enjoy that experience, sometimes it requires you to plan it yourself to guarantee that you'll get what it is that you want out of it. You know, sometimes leaving things in other people's hands doesn't always turn out, you know. It just doesn't. I have no idea what's planned for my birthday, but I can tell you, if it is nothing, then that just means you've had a year to do nothing. So I take it upon myself to say it is my job to make sure my first is everything that I hoped it would be. You can only turn 50 once. And I tell you, I've learned is that if you want anything, you can't always put it in the hands of other people. Sometimes it's just out of their control, whether it's finances or whatever. But I'm glad, I'm about to turn 50 because it encouraged me and it gives me the strength to say, you know what, it's your time to make your first. This will be the first time in ever that I become a published author. That is a first for me, and I plan on celebrating it and controlling it in the way that it is me making it an experience from my first book of many. And it's like anything else. So I while it's great to have families, husbands, wives, boyfriends, girlfriends, and people like that to either plan for you or do different things like that, but you are in control of your first. You're going to have to live in your life where you're going to have moments that you will always be your first and last, and you'll never get to experience it again. But you can reflect on it and say to yourself, it won't be like this going forward. I learned a lot about first. And in my 50 years, I'm going to make sure that I make new first ones and I control them myself as much as possible. I'm looking forward to my daughter's first. Whether it's first heartbreak to, getting into that law school or moving into her career, moving into her life and watching her progression grow. I mean, I've seen amazing things. I could not have asked to be blessed with anything more perfect than what I was blessed with. That was my first and my last, and I couldn't ask for anything greater. I see people, a lot of people have problem children and issues with their kids, and I say to myself, I understand why that was my first and last. I am forever grateful for what's been given to me, and which is probably part of the reason why it was my first and last. There's always going to be disappointments. There's always going to be things that happen to you in your life, and you sit back and say, ugh, why did I put that in their hands? You put things in people's hands because you trust them, and you want people to feel exactly what you feel. It's almost like the holiday season, it comes around the same time every year. But every year that it comes, we're never properly prepared for it. And that just goes with anything that we personally may know someone is about to approach their first. And if you don't take action to support that first, then that person has to take action against, for themselves to experience the first and be able to reflect on it and say, it was my best first ever. So on to my first and last 50. So if you're approaching any milestones this year in 2019, take control. Make sure that first is something that you take some time to reflect on and be happy about, and let it turn out the way the way you wanted it to. First are important, and you don't want to ever regret looking back on it 24 hours later and say, I'll never have that opportunity again. Even when it comes to relationships, a lot of today with social media, we've put so much emphasis on fishing and constantly looking for that perfect mate, when probably the first one you chose was probably the one you should have stayed with. It should have been your first, and it probably should have been your last. All right, everybody.